First Contact Protocol. Ambassador Trill's shuttle docked with a gentle thud against the massive human space station known as Simulacrum. Through the viewport, the station loomed like a technological marvel, a spinning wheel of metal and light suspended against the backdrop of Earth, blue and serene. As the first official diplomat from the Silurian collective to visit humanity's domain, Trill felt the weight of history on his 4 shoulders. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. Trill adjusted his translucent ceremonial robes and stepped through, his scaled feet clicking against the metal deck. What greeted him first wasn't the expected diplomatic entourage, but instead a full security detail, 6 humans in sleek black armor, pulse rifles held at parade rest. Their eyes, partially hidden behind tactical visors, tracked his every movement. Behind them stood a tall woman with copper skin and sharp eyes. Unlike the guards, she wore a deep blue uniform adorned with silver insignia. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe bun, emphasizing her angular features. "Ambassador Trill," she said, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. "I'm Commander Elena Voss, your liaison during your stay on Simulacrum. On behalf of the United Earth government, welcome." Trill extended his primary hand, mimicking the human gesture he'd studied. "Commander Voss, the Silurian collective is honored by this opportunity for understanding between our peoples." As they shook hands, Trill couldn't help but notice the sidearm holstered at her hip. Even the diplomat carried a weapon. "Your security is comprehensive," he noted, gesturing to the armed guards. Elena smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Standard protocol for Simulacrum. I hope you don't find it offensive." "Not at all," Trill lied. "Merely an observation." Elena gestured toward a corridor. "Let me show you to your quarters. Once you're settled, we can begin the station tour as scheduled." As they walked, Trill observed that nearly every human they passed was armed in some fashion. Maintenance workers with utility knives on their belts, medical staff with small pistols beneath their white coats. Even civilians appeared to carry concealed weapons, telltale bulges visible beneath clothing. "Is it always like this?" Trill asked quietly as they passed a group of laughing children. Children, practicing with training weapons in what appeared to be a recreational area. Elena followed his gaze. "Like what, Ambassador?" "The weapons. Everyone seems to have them." She tilted her head, genuinely confused. "Is that unusual? I was under the impression the Silurians understood our security protocols." "We were told humans maintained military forces, yes," Trill said carefully. "But in Silurian society, only specialized security personnel carry weapons. The average citizen would never touch one." Elena nodded slowly. "Cultural differences, then. For humans, the right to self-defense is considered fundamental." They arrived at Trill's quarters, a spacious suite adapted for Silurian physiology. After giving him time to refresh himself, Elena returned to continue the tour. Simulacrum was a marvel of engineering, spanning 15 kilometers at its widest point. As they traversed its multiple decks, Trill's initial discomfort deepened. They passed firing ranges, combat training facilities, and armories. In the civilian sectors, shops openly displayed weapons for sale alongside everyday items. In one store, a mother helped her adolescent son select his first real sidearm, with the casual air of choosing new clothing. "This is the station's primary defense control," Elena explained as they entered a vast chamber dominated by holographic displays. Technicians monitored screens showing the surrounding space, weapon systems, and defense grids. Simulacrum can defend against multiple capital ships simultaneously with its integrated defenses. "Impressive," Trill said, "though perhaps concerning that you feel such defenses necessary for a diplomatic station." Elena's expression darkened slightly. "We've learned to be prepared, Ambassador." Their tour concluded at a formal dining hall where Earth's diplomatic corps waited to welcome the Silurian ambassador. The hall was opulent, with crystal chandeliers and long tables laden with food from across Earth's cultures. Halfway through the first course, Alarms blared. Instantly, the humans stood, many drawing weapons. Elena was at Trill's side in seconds. Security drill, she explained calmly as security personnel flooded the room. Nothing to worry about, but we need to move to a secure location temporarily. As they hurried through corridors now filled with armed personnel moving with practiced precision, Trill noticed that none of the humans seemed surprised or particularly concerned. This was routine for them. In a secure bunker several levels below, Elena offered Trill a drink. I apologize for the interruption. We run these drills monthly. Commander, Trill said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of distress in Silurians. I must be direct. My people find humanity's fixation with weaponry concerning. It suggests a society built on conflict and violence. Elena considered this for a long moment, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. Ambassador, do you know much about human history? I've studied the basics of your major civilizations and conflicts. Then you know we've spent most of our existence fighting each other, nature, disease. Conflict shaped us. She set down her glass. When we developed spaceflight technology, we hoped to find a peaceful universe. Instead, our first extraterrestrial encounters were hostile. Trill leaned forward. Before your contact with the collective. Yes, there are species in this galaxy that view others as resources or threats to be eliminated. We learned that lesson the hard way. Her eyes grew distant. The Martian colonies were our first lesson. 3,000 colonists. No survivors. I was unaware of this incident. It's not information we share widely, Elena said. But before we established formal diplomatic channels with the collective, we had encounters with 3 non-human species. Only one was peaceful. The security drill ended, and they returned to the diplomatic dinner. But Trill's perception had shifted. He found himself studying the armed humans with new eyes, wondering what experiences had forged this vigilant, battle-ready culture. After dinner, back in his quarters, Trill was dictating notes for his report when Elena's voice came over the intercom. Ambassador, I apologize for the late interruption, but we've detected unusual signals at the edge of our system. As a precaution, we're elevating security protocols. Please remain in your quarters until further notice. Trill acknowledged the message, then moved to the viewport. In the distance, Earth glowed blue against the darkness. He wondered if the Silurian collective had misjudged these humans. Perhaps their weapons weren't a sign of aggression, but something else entirely. The tools of survivors in a hostile universe. The station's external lights suddenly dimmed, a sign that simulacrum was shifting to combat readiness. In the darkness of space beyond, Trill could now make out tiny pinpricks of light, ships moving in formation, their running lights visible against the void. Human ships, or something else entirely. His answer came as alarms began to sound throughout the station. The truth behind the arsenal. The alarms pierced through simulacrum with an urgency that told Ambassador Trill this was no drill. His quarters lighting shifted to emergency red as the station's AI calmly announced. Combat alert. All civilians proceed to designated shelters. All defense personnel report to stations. Trill's communication device chimed. Elena's face appeared, her expression grim. Ambassador, security personnel are en route to escort you to the diplomatic shelter. Please be ready. What's happening, Commander? Unidentified vessels have entered the system and are not responding to hails. Their approach vector and configuration match known hostile patterns. The door hissed open before Trill could respond. 2 armored guards entered, their weapons at the ready. This way, Ambassador, one said tersely. As they escorted him through corridors now filled with purposeful chaos, Trill marveled at the transformation. The casual, everyday militarism he'd observed earlier had crystallized into something else, a society shifting seamlessly into war footing. Civilians moved quickly to designated areas without panic. Security teams deployed with practiced efficiency. Even the children were being guided to shelters by instructors who maintained perfect calm. They'd reached the diplomatic shelter, a reinforced chamber deep within the station. Alina was already there, conferring with a holographic display of Simulacrum's defenses. She nodded at Trill's arrival. "Ambassador, I apologize for the disruption," she said, professional mask firmly in place. "Who are they?" Trill asked, moving to the displays. Alina hesitated, then gestured to the monitor. "We believe they're Vorax." Trill felt his heart stutter in his chest. "Vorax? You've encountered them before. You know of them. They raided Silurian outer colonies for generations. Predatory species, ruthlessly efficient." Trill moved closer to the display, studying the approaching ships. "But we haven't seen them in over 50 cycles. We assumed they'd found easier targets elsewhere in the galaxy." Alina's expression darkened. "They found us about 15 years ago. Attacked 3 of our colony worlds before we could mount an effective defense. Since then, we've had sporadic encounters." The holographic display zoomed in on the approaching fleet. 17 vessels in attack formation, their hulls bristling with weapon arrays. "Why here? Why now?" Trill wondered aloud. "Unknown. But Simulacrum is prepared," Alina replied. As if in response to her words, the station's defensive systems activated. Trill watched in awe as massive weapon platforms extended from Simulacrum's exterior. Shield generators hummed to life, creating a layered defense around the station. "Your station is remarkably well armed for a diplomatic outpost," Trill observed. Alina's smile was thin. "Simulacrum serves multiple purposes. Diplomacy is only one of them." A voice crackled over the comm system. "Commander Voss, they've launched fighter craft. Intercept squadrons deploying." "Acknowledged, Admiral," Alina responded. She turned to Trill. "Ambassador, you should know that we suspected this might happen during your visit." "You what?" "Intelligence suggested the Vorax have been monitoring Silurian communication channels. Your arrival, the first official Silurian diplomat to human space, would have been noted. You used me as bait." Trill's translator struggled to convey his indignation. "Not bait. An opportunity," Alina corrected. "The Vorax have been a mutual problem for both our peoples. We thought perhaps seeing us cooperating diplomatically might provoke them." The first impacts rocked the station as Vorax fighters engaged the human defense screen. On the monitors, sleek human interceptors swarmed to meet them. "You could have informed me," Trill said quietly. "Would your government have approved the visit if we had?" Trill couldn't answer. They both knew the Silurian collective would have recalled him immediately. For the next 2 hours, they watched the battle unfold. Trill had studied human warfare in theory, but witnessing it firsthand was something else entirely. The humans fought with a coordinated ferocity that belied their seemingly individualistic nature. Ships moved in complex patterns, sacrificing themselves when necessary to protect others. When the Vorax breached the outer defenses, station security responded with calm efficiency. "Commander," a voice reported over the comm, "they're targeting the civilian quadrants. Estimate breaching teams in 5 minutes." Alina's expression hardened. "Implement Thanatos Protocol." "Confirmed. Thanatos Protocol active." Trill watched as previously hidden weapons emplacements emerged throughout the civilian sectors. To his shock, civilians themselves were retrieving weapons from emergency caches, forming defensive positions alongside security personnel. "Your civilians fight?" he asked, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "All humans receive basic combat training," Alina said. "It's part of our educational curriculum. When the Vorax breaching vessels attach to the hull, the station's interior defenses engage." Trill watched through security feeds as the invaders, tall, insectoid creatures with natural armor plating, swarmed into the corridors. They met not just security forces but armed civilians, fighting with the determination of those defending their homes. "This is why," Trill said softly, understanding dawning. "This is why you're all armed." Alina nodded grimly. Humanity learned early that in space, help isn't coming. You must be prepared to defend yourself. The battle raged for another hour. The Vorax pressed their advantage of numbers, but the humans countered with tactical flexibility and what Trill recognized as pure stubbornness. Then, when the situation seemed most dire, Alina received a message that made her smile for the first time since the attack began. "Now we show them why you don't attack a human station," she said, inputting a command sequence. On the displays, Trill watched as specialized weapons platforms deployed from Simulacrum's outer ring. They emitted not projectiles or energy beams, but a wave of blue-white energy that washed over the Vorax ships. The effect was immediate. Their systems faltered, weapons went offline, and their coordinated assault dissolved into chaos. "Quantum disruption field," Alina explained. "Experimental technology. It temporarily scrambles their neural networks and technological systems simultaneously." With the Vorax fleet disabled, the human counterattack was ruthlessly efficient. Within 30 minutes, the surviving Vorax vessels were in retreat, leaving their boarding parties stranded on Simulacrum. "They'll be dealt with," Alina said grimly when Trill asked about the invaders still aboard. 3 days later, with Simulacrum's repairs underway and the last Vorax resistance eliminated, Alina invited Trill to a debriefing in the station's command center. Admiral Chen, Simulacrum's highest-ranking officer, was present, along with several other senior officers. "Ambassador," the Admiral began, "I want to apologize for not fully briefing you on the potential risks of your visit. However, the outcome has proven beneficial for both our peoples." "How so?" Trill asked, still uncertain how to feel about being unwittingly involved in a military operation. "The Vorax now understand that humans and Silurians are in diplomatic contact. This changes their strategic calculations significantly," Alina explained. "Moreover, we've demonstrated our defensive capabilities to them directly." "I still don't understand why they attacked," Trill said. "The Vorax avoided Silurian space for decades." Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing captured Vorax communication data. They'd been systematically testing species throughout this sector. "According to intelligence we've gathered, they're preparing for something larger, possibly a coordinated assault on multiple civilizations." Trill felt a chill down his spine. That would require resources beyond anything they've demonstrated before. "Yes," Alina agreed, "which suggests they've either developed new technologies or formed alliances we don't yet understand." The meeting continued for hours as humans shared intelligence about Vorax activities across multiple systems. Trill was stunned by the breadth of human monitoring networks and their detailed analysis of potential threats. "You see now," Alina said as she walked Trill back to his quarters afterward, "why we maintain our arsenal, why every human learns to defend themselves." "Your society is perpetually ready for war," Trill observed. "We prefer to think of it as perpetually ready to survive," she corrected. "There are predators in this galaxy, Ambassador. The Vorax are just one species we've encountered." Back in his quarters, preparing for his return journey to Silurian space, Trill composed his official report. How could he explain to the collective's peaceful leadership what he now understood about humanity? That their weapons weren't signs of barbarism or aggression, but tools of survival in a universe more dangerous than the Silurians had allowed themselves to believe. Alina arrived to escort him to his departure shuttle. She handed him a small ornate box. "A gift," she said, "customary for diplomatic first contacts." Inside was a miniature replica of Earth, exquisitely detailed, rotating slowly above its base. "It's beautiful," Trill said sincerely. "It's also a quantum-encrypted communication device," Alina added with a small smile. "Should the Silurian collective wish to discuss mutual defense arrangements in the future." Trill understood the message behind the gift. Humanity was offering an alliance, not just of diplomacy, but of protection. As his shuttle departed Simulacrum, Trill watched the massive station recede against the backdrop of Earth. He had arrived questioning humanity's apparent obsession with weapons. He was leaving with a profound understanding of their purpose. In a dangerous galaxy, the armed survive, and humanity had decided long ago that it would not merely survive, it would thrive. His people needed to hear this message before it was too late. Behind him, Simulacrum's weapons remained deployed, a silent statement to the stars. Humanity stands ready.